There are some stories that begin in darkness and yet still find a way to carry light. This is the story of a young lioness, a lioness born into captivity, raised in fear, surrounded by war, and rescued just in time to discover that even after unimaginable suffering, life can still offer tenderness, healing, and hope. Her name is Aira, and this is her journey. In the northeast of Ukraine, in a village scarred by war, silence had become something rare. Even when the shelling stopped, the air still seemed to shake with the memory of explosions. Streets were broken, homes were damaged, windows had been shattered, doors hung crooked from their frames. Smoke and dust lingered over everything like a second sky. It was not a place where anyone should have been alone. And yet, through those ruined streets, a young lioness wandered. Thin, frightened, malnourished. Too young to have already seen so much suffering. She walked carefully through the wreckage, stepping over broken glass and crumbling concrete, her body tense with fear. Every sound made her flinch. Every movement in the distance seemed like another threat. Her ribs showed through her skin. Her eyes, though still young, carried the look of an animal who had already learned not to trust the world around her. She did not belong there. A lioness is meant to know open space, safety, instinct, and freedom. But Aira had known none of those things. She was born in 2021 and had been kept by a private owner inside a house. No one knows exactly how she ended up there. No one knows what her earliest days were truly like. And perhaps that is one of the saddest parts of her story. Because the suffering that happens behind closed doors often leaves no witnesses. What is known is that she had been denied the life nature intended for her. She had not grown up beneath wide skies. She had not known the comfort of a pride. She had not learned the rhythms of the wild. Instead, she had spent the first years of her life trapped in private keeping. And then, around her, war arrived. At some point, amid the chaos, she escaped. Or perhaps the destruction forced her out. However it happened, she was suddenly alone in a world that was both open and terrifying. For the first time, she was outside the walls that had contained her. But outside was no sanctuary. Outside was war. So she wandered. Not because she was free in the true sense of the word, but because she was trying to survive. She moved through a landscape of fear, hunger, and confusion. She was still just a young lioness, yet she had no mother beside her, no pride to protect her, and no safe place to go. Only ruined streets, only uncertainty, only the instinct to keep moving. When animal welfare activists learned about her, they knew they had little time. Rescuing a frightened big cat is never simple. Rescuing one in a war zone is something else entirely. The environment was unstable. The lioness was traumatized. She was weak, frightened, and unpredictable. Not because she was dangerous by nature, but because fear can push any living being to the edge. The rescue had to be careful, controlled, and fast. And so the team came for her. Not as people seeking glory, but as people who understood what was at stake. They approached with patience and caution, reading her movements, watching her body language, trying not to deepen the fear she was already carrying. In moments like that, rescue is not about force. It is about calm in the middle of panic. It is about reaching a suffering creature without breaking what little trust remains. When they finally secured her, there was no celebration, only relief. A deep, trembling relief. She was alive. She had been found, and for the first time in what may have been her entire life, she was on her way to safety. The authorities legally transferred her to wild animal rescue in the Kyiv region, where she could finally receive what she had been denied for so long: proper food, veterinary treatment, and protection. There, the young lioness was given a new name: Aira. A new name cannot erase the past. It cannot undo fear, hunger, or trauma. But sometimes, a new name marks the beginning of a life that finally belongs to the one who carries it. At the rescue center, Aira's healing began quietly. It began with regular meals, with fresh water, with watchful eyes that cared for her instead of controlling her. At first, she remained deeply cautious. She ate like an animal that did not believe food would keep coming. She watched the humans around her with the guarded expression of someone who had learned that survival often meant expecting the worst. Her body showed signs of neglect. She was undernourished. Her development had been affected by the conditions in which she had been kept. Her mind, too, carried the weight of everything she had endured. Animals do not explain trauma in words. They show it in flinches, in hesitation, in pacing, in silence. And Aira had many silences. Still, little by little, she began to recover. Her strength started to return. Her coat improved. Her movements became steadier. And something else began to emerge beneath the fear: curiosity. It was not dramatic. It was not sudden. Healing rarely is. But the people caring for her noticed it. The little changes. The moments when she seemed less guarded. The moments when survival was no longer the only thing in her eyes. Yet even as she improved, one difficult truth remained. Wild animal rescue had saved her life, but it could not become her forever home. Emergency rescue centers are often built to stabilize animals, not to provide long-term, species-appropriate environments that large predators need. Aira would need something more. More space, more specialized care, a future designed for a lioness, not just a survivor. And so began the next chapter of her journey. Plans were made to relocate her to Felida Big Cat Sanctuary in the Netherlands, a place equipped to give traumatized big cats the safety, structure, and expert care they need to truly rebuild their lives. But moving a lioness across borders is never easy. Moving one out of a war-affected region is something else entirely. There were delays, paperwork, logistics, border complications, unexpected challenges. Every step forward seemed to meet another obstacle. The team working for Aira had to navigate not only the needs of a vulnerable wild animal, but also the harsh realities of transport during a time of instability and conflict. For months, her relocation was delayed. It was a painful wait, because rescue is not always a single moment. Sometimes rescue is a long, exhausting fight against everything that stands in the way of a better future. But the people involved did not give up. While they waited, Aira's care continued. Her health was monitored. Her trust was slowly built. Preparations for transport began, including crate training, an essential part of moving any large animal safely and with as little stress as possible. And then, in June 2023, after months of uncertainty, the day came. Aira was on her way. Her journey began with the team from Wild Animal Rescue transporting her to an overnight stop. This was only the beginning of a long road, but it was a beginning that had been fought for with patience, coordination, and determination. Those traveling with her watched closely. To their relief, Aira remained remarkably calm, as if somehow she sensed that this difficult journey was leading her towards something better. The route was not easy. Border checks took hours, delays stretched on, exhaustion settled over the team,
but they had prepared carefully, and step by step, Aira continued moving away from the world that had failed her and towards a new life. When she safely arrived in Poland, it felt like a milestone. A pause, a breath, a moment to say, she's made it this far. Then the journey continued. At last, after the long road from Ukraine, Aira arrived at Felida Big Cat Sanctuary in the Netherlands. For the people who had followed her story, it was the moment they had all been waiting for. The team at Felida was ready. They understood trauma. They understood the needs of rescued big cats. And they understood that for an animal like Aira, arrival was not the end of the story. It was the start of a new and delicate process. She had survived the journey.
Now
Easy
she
now,
needed
Aira.
time
This is
to
your safe
rest,
space.
Her
to
vitals
breathe,
are stable. She's
to
adapting well.
adjust.
Paperwork is
To
ready.
feel.
Routes are planned.
Perhaps for
Loading
the first
complete,
time,
the journey
she
begins.
was somewhere truly safe. Her new surroundings were calm, structured, and designed for her species. There were new smells, new sounds, new routines. But unlike the chaos she had known before, these changes came within an environment built around care. The team watched her closely as she settled in, and slowly, Aira began to bloom. Her body became stronger, her confidence grew, her behavior softened in subtle but important ways. She explored her enclosure. She reacted with curiosity to her surroundings. Her medical checks showed encouraging signs, and though the scars of her past could never be erased, she was no longer living entirely inside them. Then came a new possibility. At Felida, there was another young rescued lion, a lion named Kian. Like Aira, Kian had his own history of hardship. He too had been denied a natural life. He too had known rescue instead of freedom. And as the team considered Aira's future, they began to explore whether the two young lions might one day be introduced. For lions, companionship can matter deeply, but socialization must be approached carefully, especially with rescued animals. Both Aira and Kian had spent their lives without proper contact with another lion. That meant every step had to be taken with patience and expertise. First came scent, then visual contact through safe barriers, then time. Time to observe, to react, to adjust. Their first moments of awareness were electric. They noticed each other immediately. There was curiosity, energy, excitement. At first, both lions needed time to process each other's presence. Their enthusiasm was intense. Their reactions were new. They had never known what it meant to share space, attention, and emotional awareness with one of their own kind. But over the days that followed, something beautiful began to happen. They started to settle. The team moved Aira to a larger enclosure next to Kian. She handled the internal move well, and once there, she began to adjust to being close to him. They watched one another, responded to one another, learned one another's rhythms. And when the time was right, the gate between them was opened. It was a thrilling moment, not because it was dramatic in the way films often portray such scenes, but because it was real. Two young lions, both shaped by difficult beginnings, were meeting in a safe place, under the watch of people who wanted nothing from them except well-being. At first, there was excitement and uncertainty, but soon their interactions became warmer, softer, more natural. They started to form a bond. For the caretakers, it was moving to witness. After months of preparation and patience, the two lions were finally together. What had once seemed impossible was now unfolding in front of them. Aira was not just surviving anymore, she was living. She had companionship, she had connection, she had another lion beside her. It felt like the beginning of something truly hopeful. And in time, another opportunity arrived. After successfully settling at Felida and forming a bond with Kian,
the two young lions were prepared to transfer to Lions Rock Big Cat Sanctuary in South Africa, a vast, species-appropriate environment where they could continue their lives together in a spacious forever home. The preparations were extensive. Daily crate training helped them get ready for transport. Their care team handled every step with attention and professionalism. This was no simple move. It was an enormous operation, requiring planning, trust, and precision. But Kian and Aira were ready. They boarded the plane to South Africa, and when they arrived, they were welcomed by warmth, open space, and a new chapter under a wide African sky. For Aira, the contrast was almost beyond words. From war-torn streets in Ukraine to sanctuary in the Netherlands to the sunlit landscape of South Africa. What a journey! At Lions Rock, she and Kian began acclimating to their spacious new enclosure. They were monitored closely by their caretakers to ensure a smooth transition, and once again, patience guided every step. They were together, safe, cared for, and finally living in conditions worthy of their nature. For those who had followed Aira's story from the beginning, it felt like a miracle. She had gone from a frightened, starving lioness wandering through a village destroyed by war to a young lioness with safety, companionship, and a future. But life does not always honor the endings we hope for. In December 2025, tragedy struck. Aira died, suddenly. The news was devastating. Her caretakers found her lifeless in her enclosure, and the shock was profound. She was still young, and previous health checks had shown no indication of serious underlying conditions that might explain such a sudden loss. There had been no warning, no time to prepare, only heartbreak. For the people who had loved and cared for her, the grief was immense. Aira's story had touched so many because she represented more than rescue. She represented recovery. She represented second chances. She represented the belief that even after cruelty and war, a life could still turn toward peace. And now, all of that was overshadowed by sudden loss. But Aira was not the only one affected. Kian remained behind. For lions who form bonds, the loss of a companion can be deeply distressing. The sanctuary team knew they had to act quickly to support him. Their grief for Aira was real, but Kian's well-being became an immediate priority. A behavior consultant created a daily plan to help him adjust. He received close observation, extra enrichment activities, support from volunteers, and careful management designed to keep him mentally engaged and emotionally supported. His caretakers did everything they could to help him navigate the sudden absence of the lioness who had become part of his world. And in that response, there was something deeply meaningful. Because even in grief, care continued. That, perhaps, is one of the most powerful truths in Aira's story. Her life was not long enough, not nearly long enough. She deserved more years, more peace, more mornings in the sun, more time beside the lion she had learned to trust. But though her life was short, her memory mattered. It mattered because she was rescued. It mattered because she was seen. It mattered because people chose not to look away. It mattered because she experienced safety, healing, and companionship before the end. Aira's story is heartbreaking, yes, but it is also a story of courage, a story of compassion, a story of what can happen when human beings decide to undo harm instead of causing more of it. She began life in captivity. She walked through war. She was found in ruin. She was carried across borders. She was given a name, a sanctuary, a companion, and a chance to begin again. And though her time was far too short, her memory lives on. It lives on in the people who rescued her, in the caretakers who loved her, in the work being done for other big cats still waiting for their own second chance. and in every heart that hears her story and understands perhaps more deeply than before that wild animals are not possessions, they are lives. Lives with fear, lives with dignity, lives with the capacity to suffer and to heal. Aira may be gone, but her journey remains. A reminder that even in a world filled with violence and loss, compassion can still cross borders. It can still open gates. It can still change a life. And sometimes, even if only for a while, it can give a lioness the peace she always deserved. This was Aira's journey, a journey through war, survival, rescue, love, and loss. And though her time was brief, her story will continue to speak for every big cat still waiting to be saved.